An old woman is laughed at in a real estate office. Then her rich husband buys the entire building. Eleanor Walsh smoothed down the worn fabric of her favorite cardigan as she stepped off the bus. At 73, she still insisted on taking public transportation, much to the dismay of her husband. "It keeps me connected to real people," she'd always tell him with that gentle smile that had made him fall in love with her 50 years ago. Today's mission was important. Her granddaughter Jennifer was moving to Boston for medical school, and Eleanor wanted to surprise her with an apartment. Not just any apartment, something safe, comfortable, and close to the hospital. Eleanor had researched Beacon Hill properties online, impressed by their portfolio of upscale buildings in the area. The crisp autumn air nipped at her cheeks as she approached the gleaming glass building. Inside, the real estate office buzzed with activity. Young agents in tailored suits darted between sleek desks, speaking animatedly into Bluetooth headsets. Eleanor clutched her worn leather purse closer to her body, suddenly feeling out of place in her practical shoes and simple clothes. "Can I help you?" A receptionist with immaculately styled hair barely glanced up from her computer. "So, yes. I'd like to speak with someone about purchasing an apartment," Eleanor said, her voice carrying the soft lilt of her southern upbringing. The receptionist gave Eleanor a quick once-over, taking in her modest appearance. "Do you have an appointment?" "No. I thought I might speak with someone today if possible." The young woman sighed dramatically. "Our agents only see clients by appointment, especially for purchases." Her tone suggested she didn't believe Eleanor could afford anything they offered. Eleanor stood straighter. "I understand you're busy, but I won't take much time. It's for my granddaughter who—" "Ma'am, perhaps you'd be more comfortable at Wilson Community Realty down the street. They handle more affordable properties." The receptionist's smile didn't reach her eyes. Before Eleanor could respond, a young agent passing by chuckled. "Oh, Beacon Hill Studios start at $500,000. Amber. I think Mrs." He paused, waiting for Eleanor to fill in her name, but continued when she remained silent. "Might be in the wrong place." Heat crept up Eleanor's neck, but decades of Southern grace kept her voice steady. "I'm quite aware of property values in this area, young man. Now, is there someone here who might actually be interested in helping a potential client?" The agent exchanged glances with the receptionist. "Todd's free," he said with a smirk. "He specializes in managing expectations." The receptionist laughed, a sharp sound that cut through the ambient noise of the office. Several heads turned, and Eleanor felt the weight of judgmental stares. For a moment, she considered leaving, but Jennifer's excited face flashed in her mind. Her granddaughter deserved this gift, and Eleanor wouldn't let these people stand in her way. Todd turned out to be equally dismissive. As Eleanor described what she was looking for, he barely took notes, instead showing her listings well below her stated budget with thinly veiled condescension. This one might be more your speed," he said, sliding a printout of a rundown studio across his desk. "It's a senior-friendly building." "I said it's for my granddaughter," Eleanor corrected him firmly. Todd leaned back in his chair. "With all due respect, ma'am, the properties in this neighborhood require substantial down payment. Perhaps your granddaughter should consider student housing." Another agent walking by snickered, whispering something to Todd that made him suppress a laugh. Eleanor felt her hands trembling slightly with a mixture of anger and humiliation. In that moment, she longed for Robert's presence. He never would have allowed this treatment, but she had insisted on doing this herself. "I think we're done here," Eleanor said, rising from her chair with as much dignity as she could muster. As she walked toward the exit, she heard barely suppressed laughter behind her and caught fragments of whispered comments. "Waste of time. Probably can't even afford her bus fare home. Did you see that cardigan? Straight from 1985? Eleanor kept her head high, but inside, something crumbled a little. She'd lived modestly by choice for decades, but she'd forgotten how cruel people could be when they judged based solely on appearances. Outside, the cheerful autumn day seemed to mock her mood. Eleanor pulled out her phone, Not the latest model, but perfectly functional, and made a call. "Robert, it's me. No, it didn't go well. In fact, I think I need your help with this one." Robert Walsh ended the call with his wife and sat perfectly still behind his mahogany desk. In 45 years of marriage, he'd rarely heard that particular tone in Eleanor's voice. Hurt, disguised as calm, pride wounded but intact, it awakened something protective and fierce within him. At 75, Robert had built Walsh Investments from nothing into a financial empire that managed billions in assets. Yet few people would recognize him on the street. He and Eleanor had agreed early in their marriage that ostentation wasn't for them. They lived well but modestly, focusing their wealth on philanthropy and family rather than status symbols. Now, someone had made Eleanor feel small because of that choice. "Cancel my afternoon," he told his assistant, rising from his chair with surprising agility for his age. Within 20 minutes, he was sitting across from Eleanor at their favorite cafe. Her composure had returned, but he could see the lingering hurt in her eyes as she recounted her experience. "They laughed at me." Robert actually laughed. She stirred her tea absently. "I felt like I was invisible, or worse, visible only as some doddering old woman they could mock." Robert covered her hand with his. "I'm sorry you experienced that, Ellie." "It's not about me," she insisted. "It's about how they behave when they think someone can't afford their properties. Imagine how they treat people who actually can't." Robert nodded slowly. Eleanor's concern for others, even when she herself had been wronged, was one of the countless reasons he adored her. "I still want to get that apartment for Jennifer," she continued, "but not through them." Robert was quiet for a moment, an idea forming. What was the name of this place again? Beacon Hill Properties. In that new building on Commonwealth Avenue, Robert pulled out his phone and made a brief call, speaking in low tones. When he hung up, Eleanor raised an eyebrow. "What are you planning, Robert?" "Just gathering information," he smiled, the same boyish smile that had charmed her at 19. "Tell me more about what you envision for Jennifer's place." As they discussed ideas for their granddaughter's apartment, Robert sent several texts, receiving rapid responses. Eleanor pretended not to notice. After decades together, she recognized when her husband was setting something in motion. Later that afternoon, Robert's lawyer confirmed what he suspected. The building housing Beacon Hill Properties had recently been listed for sale, with the current owner quietly seeking offers. The real estate agency itself had a 5-year lease on the ground floor. "Eleanor," Robert said as they drove home, "what if we approach this differently? Instead of just buying Jennifer an apartment, what if we could ensure no one else gets treated the way you were today?" Eleanor studied her husband's profile, recognizing the determined set of his jaw. "What exactly are you suggesting?" "I think it's time for Walsh Investments to diversify into commercial real estate," he replied with a gleam in his eye, starting with one particular building on Commonwealth Avenue. Eleanor considered this. Normally, she was the voice of restraint in their partnership, the one who reminded Robert that revenge was rarely productive. But the memory of those young agents snickering as she walked away still stung. "Just buying the building won't change how they behave," she pointed out. "No," Robert agreed, "but it might create an opportunity to teach a valuable lesson." Over dinner that evening, they refined their plan. This wouldn't be about humiliation or retaliation. That wasn't their style. Instead, they saw an opportunity to transform a negative experience into something constructive, something that might actually change perspectives. "If we do this," Eleanor said, "we do it my way. No firing, no evictions, just education." Robert raised his glass to her. "Your way is always the better way, my dear. I'll have Thomas prepare the offer tomorrow. Make it competitive, but not extravagant," Eleanor advised. "We're not desperate, just determined." Later, as they prepared for bed, Robert watched his wife of nearly 5 decades brush her silver hair. She caught his gaze in the mirror. "What is it?" "I was just thinking how lucky I am," he said simply. 50 years, and you still surprise me." Eleanor smiled, the hurt of the day finally fading. Odu, those people saw an old woman in a worn cardigan. They made assumption. Their mistake, Robert replied. I've always known exactly who I married. The smartest, kindest woman I've ever met. And tomorrow, we begin teaching Beacon Hill Properties the danger of judging books by their covers. The following week passed in a whirlwind of discreet negotiation. Robert's reputation as a straightforward, no-nonsense businessman made the process smoother than anticipated. By Friday afternoon, the papers were signed. Walsh Investments was now the proud owner of 537 Commonwealth Avenue, including all existing lease agreements. Congratulations, Mr. Walsh, said Thomas, his lawyer of 30 years, as they concluded the final meeting. The seller was quite motivated. I don't think he realized who he was dealing with. Robert merely nodded, slipping the documents into his briefcase. No reason he should. Let's keep it that way for now. That evening, as he and Eleanor celebrated with a quiet dinner at home, he outlined the next steps. The current property management company has been notified of the ownership change, but tenants won't be informed until next week, he explained, which gives us time for a little reconnaissance. Eleanor raised an eyebrow. Reconnaissance? Robert Walsh, are you suggesting we spy on them? Not spy, he corrected with a mischievous smile. Observe. I thought we might visit Beacon Hill Properties again on Monday, together this time as potential clients. Eleanor considered this, a slow smile spreading across her face. I suppose I could wear that same cardigan. The weekend felt interminable to Eleanor, who found herself both dreading and anticipating their Monday visit. When the day finally arrived, she dressed deliberately in the same modest outfit she'd worn before, right down to her comfortable walking shoes and the worn leather purse that had been a gift from Jennifer years ago. Robert, meanwhile, opted for what Eleanor called his retirement uniform, khakis, a simple button-down shirt, and a navy blazer that had seen better days. With his wire-rimmed glasses and silver hair, he looked every bit the retired schoolteacher, rather than the financial titan he was. Ready for our performance, he asked, offering her his arm as they left their Brookline home. It's hardly a performance, Eleanor replied. We're simply being ourselves, just not revealing all our cards at once. They took an Uber to Commonwealth Avenue, walking the last block arm in arm. As they approached the gleaming building, Eleanor felt a flutter of nervousness in her stomach. Robert squeezed her hand reassuringly. Remember, he whispered, we're just looking for property for our granddaughter. Inside, the office appeared much as it had during Eleanor's previous visit, busy, sleek, and intimidating. The same receptionist sat at the front desk, now engaged in animated conversation with the young agent who had mocked Eleanor. Excuse me, Robert said pleasantly. We're hoping to speak with someone about apartments in the area. The receptionist, Amber, Eleanor recalled, glanced up with the same dismissive expression she'd worn before. Her eyes flickered with brief recognition as they landed on Eleanor, followed by poorly concealed annoyance. Do you have an appointment? She asked, her tone making it clear she already knew the answer. No, Robert replied. We were hoping someone might have availability today. The young agent beside her desk smirked. Todd's with clients all afternoon. Maybe try the community housing office. They handle senior apartments. We're actually looking for our granddaughter, Eleanor explained, noticing how they'd immediately assumed the property would be for them. She's starting medical school at MGH. Amber and the agent exchanged glances. Our properties start at $500,000, Amber said slowly, as if speaking to someone hard of hearing. The monthly maintenance fees alone are substantial. We understand. Robert nodded pleasantly. We're prepared to pay cash if we find the right place. This statement was met with poorly disguised skepticism. Eventually, they were directed to wait for an agent named Melissa, who was described as someone who handles walk-ins. They don't believe us, Eleanor whispered once they were seated in the waiting area. Would you, if you were them? Robert replied with a twinkle in his eye. Melissa turned out to be a recent hire, clearly given the task no one else wanted. She was more polite than her colleagues had been, but Eleanor could sense her uncertainty as she showed them listings on her tablet. This one bedroom is listed at $550,000, she explained, sounding apologetic. The location is excellent for MGH, but you're not sure we can afford it, Robert finished for her kindly. Melissa blushed. I didn't mean to imply. It's all right, Eleanor assured her. We're used to it. As they discussed details, Eleanor noticed Todd, the agent who had been so dismissive during her previous visit, watching them from his office. He whispered something to a colleague, both of them chuckling as they glanced toward the elderly couple, wasting Melissa's time. Robert noticed too, but gave no indication. Instead, he asked insightful questions about property values, market trends, and specific buildings in the area. Melissa began to engage more genuinely, seemingly surprised by his knowledge. After about 20 minutes, Robert nodded to Eleanor. I think we've taken enough of Ms. Melissa's time for today, he said. She's been very helpful. Melissa handed them her card. Please call if you have any questions, and I can arrange showings for any properties that interest you. As they prepared to leave, Robert paused. Actually, I do have one more question. Who owns this building? It's quite impressive. Oh, some investment group, Melissa replied vaguely. We just leased the space. I see. Well, thank you again. As they walked out past the reception, they overheard Amber whispering to the young agent, Can you believe it? As if they could afford Beacon Hill. Did you see his jacket? Outside, Eleanor took a deep breath of autumn air. They haven't changed. No, Robert agreed. But Melissa showed potential. She was skeptical, but still treated us with basic respect. So what now? Robert checked his watch. Now, my dear, we put the next phase of our plan into action. I believe it's time for the new building owner to schedule an introduction with his tenants. 3 days later, Beacon Hill Properties received formal notice that the building's new owner would be conducting an inspection and meeting with all commercial tenants on Friday morning. The memo, sent by Walsh Property Management, a hastily created subsidiary of Walsh Investments, requested the attendance of all staff. They're probably going to raise our rent, Todd grumbled to Amber as they prepared for the meeting, straightening displays and tidying the already immaculate office. As long as they don't decide to renovate and kick us out, Amber replied. But my cousin's firm got forced out of their space when some tech billionaire bought their building and converted it to luxury condos. The office manager, Patricia Sanders, hustled around nervously. At 55, she had built Beacon Hill Properties from a small agency into one of Boston's premier real estate firms. The news of new ownership had disturbed her carefully cultivated sense of control. Everyone present and accounted for? She asked, surveying her team of 12 agents. The new owners will be here in 15 minutes. First impressions matter. Any idea who bought the place? Todd asked. Patricia shook her head. Some investment group. Walsh Properties or Walsh something. I couldn't find much information. At precisely 10 a.m., the office door opened and Eleanor walked in, followed by Robert and a small team of professionally dressed individuals. Eleanor now wore an elegant pantsuit, her silver hair styled in a sleek bob. Still herself, but a version these people had never seen. Confusion rippled through the room. Amber's eyes widened in recognition, while Todd froze mid-conversation. Patricia stepped forward, hand extended. Welcome. I'm Patricia Sanders, managing broker. You must be Eleanor Walsh, she replied, shaking Patricia's hand firmly. And this is my husband, Robert Walsh. We're the new owners of the building. A stunned silence fell over the office. Robert stepped forward. Thank you all for making time for this meeting. We're looking forward to getting acquainted with all our tenants, but I must admit, we were particularly interested in meeting the team at Beacon Hill Properties. His eyes scanned the room, lingering momentarily on Amber, who had gone pale, and Todd, who was studying his shoes with sudden fascination. Perhaps we could use your conference room for a brief discussion, Robert suggested. Minutes later, the entire Beacon Hill staff sat around their conference table, an atmosphere of bewildered tension hanging in the air. Thomas, Robert's lawyer, distributed folders to each person. "Before we begin," Robert said pleasantly, "I want to clarify that we have no intention of disrupting successful businesses within our property. In fact, we prefer long-term, stable tenants." Relief flickered across several faces, including Patricia. "However," Eleanor added, her voice gentle but firm, "we do take a personal interest in how businesses in our buildings operate, particularly how they treat potential clients." Understanding began to dawn on Patricia's face. "Have you been here before?" "I visited last week," Eleanor confirmed. "I was interested in purchasing an apartment for our granddaughter, who's starting at MGH. My experience was educational." Todd and Amber seemed to be trying to disappear into their chairs. "And we returned together on Monday," Robert added. "That visit was equally informative." Patricia looked mortified. I don't know what to say." "There's no need for apologies yet," Eleanor assured her. "We're more interested in solutions than recrimination." Robert opened one of the folders. "We've prepared a proposal. Your lease has 4 years remaining, which we have no intention of terminating. However, we would like to suggest an amendment." Thomas handed Patricia a document. "We're proposing a partnership of sorts. Walsh Investments has a significant philanthropic arm focused on affordable housing and first-time homebuyer assistance. We'd like Beacon Hill Properties to designate one agent to work specifically with these clients. Additionally," Eleanor continued, "we'd like to implement a training program addressing unconscious bias and equitable customer service. Our foundation would cover all costs." Patricia scanned the document, looking stunned. "This is unexpected. We believe good business and social responsibility can coexist," Robert explained. "And sometimes lessons come from unexpected places." He looked directly at Todd and Amber. "For instance, one might learn that the woman in the worn cardigan they dismissed could be their landlord, or that the senior citizen they mocked might be looking to make a cash purchase." The room was absolutely silent now. "We're not here for apologies or to make anyone lose their jobs," Eleanor said softly. "We're here because moments of humiliation can either end in bitterness or become opportunities for growth. We prefer the latter." Patricia cleared her throat. "I'm deeply sorry for any disrespect shown to you. That's not how I've built this business, and it's not what I stand for." "Actions speak louder than apologies," Robert replied. "We'll give you a week to review our proposal. In the meantime," he slid another folder toward Patricia. "These are listings we believe might suit our granddaughter. Perhaps Melissa could show them to us." We found her approach refreshingly professional. The meeting concluded shortly after ours, leaving the Beacon Hill staff in various states of shock and embarrassment. As Eleanor and Robert prepared to leave, Melissa approached them tentatively. "Mr. and Mrs. Walsh, I just wanted to say, I've only been here 3 months, and I've been uncomfortable with how some potential clients are treated. Thank you for what you're doing." Eleanor smiled warmly. "Sometimes change needs a little push, dear. We'll see you tomorrow for those showings." Outside, Eleanor linked her arm through Robert's as they walked toward their waiting car. "Do you think they'll accept our proposal?" she asked. "Patricia will," Robert replied confidently. "Seat, she's a businesswoman first, and our terms are more than fair. And the others? Time will tell. But I suspect Todd and Amber received a valuable lesson today about judging books by their covers." "Speaking of valuable," Eleanor mused, "we still need to find Jennifer's apartment." Robert squeezed her hand. "One problem at a time, my dear. One problem at a time." 6 months later, Eleanor and Robert sat on a comfortable sofa in Jennifer's new Beacon Hill apartment, watching their granddaughter arrange fresh flowers on her kitchen counter. "It's absolutely perfect, Grandma," Jennifer said, her eyes bright with happiness. "I still can't believe you found this place, and that you and Grandpa did all this." "We did very little," Eleanor demurred, though she couldn't help feeling proud as she looked around the tastefully furnished apartment. "Melissa was the one who found it." "Still," Jennifer, "I know there's more to the story than you're telling me," Robert chuckled. "Your grandmother has always believed in letting actions speak for themselves. The apartment had indeed been a find, a two-bedroom unit in a historic building just 10 minutes walk from the hospital. More remarkably, it had come through Beacon Hill Property, newly established next-generation program, which helped young professionals and first-time buyers navigate Boston's intimidating real estate market. The program had been Patricia Sanders' counter-proposal to the Walshes. Rather than simply designating one agent for affordable housing clients, she had created an entire division of her company dedicated to serving a broader demographic, with Melissa at the helm. "How is the program going?" Jennifer asked, sitting across from them with a cup of tea. "Quite well, from what we hear," Robert replied. "Patricia mentions it every time we run into it." What he didn't mention was how the experience had transformed Beacon Hill Properties. The training program on unconscious bias had expanded into a company-wide commitment to equitable service. Todd had transferred to their commercial division, where his aggressive style was better suited, while Amber, surprisingly, had requested to join Melissa's team, apparently inspired by the opportunity to rebuild her professional reputation. "And the building?" Jennifer probed, always perceptive. "Are you keeping it?" Eleanor and Robert exchanged glances. "Actually," Eleanor admitted, "we've decided to donate it to our foundation. It will become part of our affordable housing portfolio, with units set aside for medical residents and healthcare workers." Jennifer's eyes widened. "The whole building? Grandma, that's a good investment in the community." Robert cut in smoothly. "Besides, we've discovered we enjoy being landlords. There's something satisfying about creating spaces where people can thrive." Later, as they prepared to leave, Jennifer hugged them both tightly. "Ah, thank you doesn't seem adequate," she said. "Not just for the apartment, but for everything. The example you set." Walking to their car afterward, Eleanor leaned against Robert's shoulder. "We never did tell her exactly what happened, did we?" "Some stories are better left untold," Robert replied. "Besides, I think we've all moved past it now." Eleanor nodded thoughtfully. "You know, when I walked into that office 6 months ago and they laughed at me, I felt so small, so invisible. I never expected it would lead to all this." "That's always been your gift, Ellie," Robert said, stopping to look at her. "Taking moments that might break others and transforming them into opportunities for growth. It's why I've loved you for 50 years. 50 years and counting," she reminded him with a smile. As they drove home, Eleanor reflected on the journey of the past 6 months. What had begun as a humiliating encounter had blossomed into something neither of them could have anticipated. Not just an apartment for Jennifer, but a program that would help countless young professionals find homes in Boston, a real estate company transformed by a commitment to equitable service, and a building that would soon provide affordable housing to those who needed it most. It wasn't about revenge, as some might have expected when Robert first suggested buying the building. It was about restoration, restoring dignity, restoring perspective, restoring opportunity. "Penny for your thoughts?" Robert asked as they pulled into their driveway. Eleanor smiled. "I was just thinking that sometimes being underestimated is actually a gift. It gives you the chance to surprise people." "Well, you've been surprising me for 50 years, Robert replied, taking her hand, "and I wouldn't have it any other way." That evening, as Eleanor hung her favorite cardigan in the closet, the same one she'd worn that fateful day, she felt a sense of completion. She hadn't kept it as a reminder of humiliation, but as a symbol of an important truth. Appearances deceive, assumptions mislead, but kindness and dignity ultimately prevail. The cardigan, like Eleanor herself, contained multitudes that couldn't be seen at first glance. And in teaching that lesson to Beacon Hill Properties, she and Robert had created a ripple effect that would touch countless lives, including those who might one day walk into that office wearing worn cardigans of their own, only to be greeted with the respect and attention everyone deserves.